The Galactic Council chamber echoed with laughter. Dozens of alien representatives sat in their high seats, their holographic displays flashing the image of a human warship. The vessel, sleek and black, hovered in a projection above the center of the room. It was the pride of Earth's fleet, the culmination of years of desperate research and innovation. And yet, the assembled alien powers found it amusing. "This thing," scoffed High Admiral Zelfar of the Veiled Dominion, his deep red scales rippling with amusement. "This is humanity's great warship. I have seen cargo haulers with more intimidating designs." Several other representatives chuckled, their expressions ranging from mild amusement to outright mockery. The Rulzakan warlords, a species of towering, insect-like creatures, clicked their mandibles in a way that humans had come to recognize as laughter. Even the more reserved members of the council smirked as they studied the specifications displayed beside the hologram. Ambassador Jonathan Hale sat alone at the human delegation's table, his face impassive as he watched the spectacle unfold. He had expected this reaction. Humanity's history with the Galactic Council had been one of constant dismissal and condescension. Despite their rapid technological growth, Earth was still considered a minor power, an upstart species barely worthy of notice. The Council had only allowed humanity a seat at the table because of their stubbornness, not because they were seen as equals. "The Terrans always did have an exaggerated sense of their own importance," muttered Chancellor Vrex of the Syndicate Worlds. His golden eyes gleamed with amusement as he leaned forward. "Tell us, Ambassador Hale, what do you call this masterpiece of engineering?" Hale met his gaze without flinching. "The Oblivion." More laughter erupted. The name, intended to inspire fear, only added to the mockery in the chamber. Zelfar wiped a tear from his eye. His fanged mouth curled into a smirk. "Oblivion? How fitting. That is exactly where this ship will end up if it dares to challenge a real fleet." Another alien, a broad-shouldered Trelvian commander, let out a low growl. "Humanity should stick to its planetary defenses. War is for real powers. You cannot possibly believe this ship can stand against an Armada." Hale exhaled slowly, keeping his expression neutral. He had spent enough time in these halls to know how pointless it was to argue. These species, these so-called ruling empires of the galaxy, had never faced true hardship. They had never known desperation, never needed to fight for survival the way humanity had. They had inherited their power, grown complacent in their dominance. They assumed their fleets would reign supreme forever. "Your confidence is noted," Hale said finally, "but Earth has never sought war. We only seek recognition as equals." "Equals." Zelfar leaned back, folding his powerful arms. "You are nothing but a fledgling species playing at war. Your technology is decades behind. If we wanted, we could erase your fleets in a single engagement." "Perhaps," Hale said, his voice calm. "But you won't." That silenced the room, if only for a moment. A few murmurs spread across the council members as they considered his words. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Zelfar's smirk faded. "And why is that?" Hale tapped a small device on the table in front of him. Instantly, the hologram of the Oblivion changed. Its surface shimmered, revealing an intricate layer of adaptive plating. The ship's energy signature fluctuated, displaying readings that should have been impossible. Advanced shielding, faster-than-light enhancements, weapon systems that defied conventional understanding. The murmurs grew louder. "That's not. Those readings are inconsistent," Chancellor Vrex muttered, narrowing his eyes. "You're fabricating this." Hale met his gaze. "You assume that because you have never seen anything like it. We understand. It is easy to dismiss what you do not comprehend." Zelfar leaned forward, his amusement now replaced with something colder. "If your ship is so powerful, why not demonstrate? A single vessel against one of our armadas. Let us see this miracle of human engineering in action." Hale did not hesitate. "Agreed." The chamber fell into silence. Even those who had been laughing moments before now shifted uneasily. The suggestion had been made in jest, a way to further humiliate the humans. Yet Hale had accepted without hesitation. That was not the reaction they had expected. A few council members exchanged glances. "You're serious?" one of them asked. "Completely." Zelthar's eyes narrowed. "Very well. One of our fleets is stationed near the Talos Expanse. We will meet your ship there in 3 cycles. Let the galaxy witness the futility of human arrogance." Hale stood. "We welcome the opportunity." Without another word, he turned and walked out of the chamber. As soon as he was out of sight, he let out a slow breath. His heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to let it show. The council thought they were walking into an easy victory. They believed humanity was overstepping its place. They had no idea what was coming. The Talos Expanse was a graveyard of dead stars, a region of space littered with the remnants of ancient cosmic collisions. It was vast, empty, and silent, except for the approaching armada of the Vile Dominion. Thousands of warships emerged from hyperspace, their engines burning bright against the darkness. The fleet was massive, a terrifying show of force, meant not just for war, but for spectacle. The Galactic Council would be watching. Dozens of species across the stars would have their eyes on this battle. The Vale wanted to make an example of humanity, to crush their arrogance in front of the entire galaxy. High Admiral Zelthar stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, the Vengeance of Vale, his golden eyes scanning the display before him. His fleet was positioned in perfect formation, rows of cruisers, battleships, and carriers, each one bristling with weapons designed to tear through enemy defenses. No species had ever withstood the full force of the Vile Dominion's might. Today would be no different. "Status report," Zelthar ordered. "All ships in position, Admiral," one of his officers responded. "The human vessel has not yet arrived." Zelthar let out a quiet chuckle. Perhaps they've come to their senses and fled. A few of his bridge officers laughed, but the moment was short-lived. A sudden energy spike registered on their scanners. A distortion rippled through space at the far edge of the battlefield. Then it arrived. A single ship, the Oblivion. It appeared in a flash of white light, emerging from a hyperspace jump unlike anything the Vale had ever seen. It didn't decelerate like a normal warship. It didn't drift into position. It simply was there, as if the laws of physics had bent to its will. The bridge of the Vengeance of Vale went silent. Zelthar narrowed his eyes, studying the vessel on the main display. It was smaller than he expected, barely the size of one of his command frigates. It had no visible weapons, no external shielding arrays, nothing that suggested it could stand against an armada of this size. And yet, something felt wrong. A deep unease settled over him. He had fought countless battles, crushed rebellions, annihilated fleets that dared challenge the Dominion. He had never hesitated. But now, as he stared at this lone ship facing his armada, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Doubt. "Scan that vessel," he ordered. His officers complied, but the results only deepened the confusion. "Admiral, we're getting erratic readings. Energy signatures are fluctuating. Sometimes off the charts, sometimes non-existent." Zelthar frowned. "Clarify." The officer hesitated. "I can't, sir. The ship's readings don't make sense. It's like it's phasing in and out of our sensors." More whispers spread across the bridge. This was impossible. No warship, no matter how advanced, could manipulate its energy signature like that. Zelthar clenched his fists. This was a trick. It had to be. "Enough of this nonsense," he growled. "Target the human ship. Fire all forward batteries." A storm of plasma and kinetic rounds erupted from the front lines of the Vale fleet, surging through space toward the Oblivion. The firepower unleashed was enough to obliterate a moon. There was no chance of survival. And yet, the human ship moved. Not in the way a warship was supposed to. It didn't shift position, didn't rotate or bank. It simply wasn't there anymore. Gasps filled the bridge as the projectiles passed harmlessly through empty space. The Oblivion had reappeared in a different position entirely, as if reality itself had glitched for a fraction of a second. Zelfar's grip on the command rail tightened. What was that? Sir, it. The officer swallowed hard. It vanished and rematerialized. We have no explanation. Before anyone could process what had happened, the Oblivion retaliated. A single pulse of energy erupted from the ship, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. The blast had no visible fire, no chaotic explosion, just a sudden, unnatural silence. And then, the first wave of Veil warships went dark. One by one, dozens of cruisers lost power. Their engines flickered out, their shields collapsed, their weapons went silent. For a brief moment, they simply floated, lifeless in space. And then the Oblivion struck. The human ship moved again, faster than thought, faster than anything in the Dominion's records. It weaved between the disabled vessels, firing precise bursts of energy that shattered hulls, detonated fuel reserves, and tore through warships with terrifying efficiency. The Veil officers were shouting now, their voices panicked. Shields are failing. We've lost contact with the second battle group. Their weapons are breaching our armor like it's paper. Zelfar could only stare. This wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. His fleet, his invincible fleet, was being destroyed by a single ship. A cold sweat dripped down his temple as the realization sank in. Humanity had not built a warship in the traditional sense. They had built something else, something beyond their understanding. And the galaxy had just made the mistake of provoking it. The battlefield was chaos. The Oblivion moved like a phantom, vanishing and reappearing, carving through the Veil fleet with impossible precision. Warships that had once stood as monuments of Dominion power now floated as broken husks. Explosions dotted the darkness, flashes of orange and white swallowing entire sections of the fleet. On the bridge of the Vengeance of Veil, High Admiral Zelfar stood frozen. His officers were shouting, their voices laced with panic, but he barely heard them. His mind struggled to process what he was witnessing. One ship, one human ship had shattered the might of the Veil Dominion's Armada. Admiral, the second and third battle groups are wiped out. Emergency distress signals coming from all sectors. We're registering impossible energy fluctuations. Nothing in our database can explain this. Zelfar forced himself to act. Regroup all remaining forces. Pull back and form a defensive perimeter. His orders were met with frantic confirmations, but deep down, he knew the truth. There was no defense against this. The Oblivion was something else entirely. It wasn't fighting a battle. It was ending one. The ship phased again, vanishing from all scanners. For a brief, desperate moment, Zelfar thought that maybe, just maybe, they had driven it off. Then it reappeared, right behind the Vengeance of Veil. Brace for impact. Someone screamed, but there was no impact, no explosion, no storm of plasma or kinetic rounds. Instead, the human ship did something far worse. A transmission request appeared on Zelfar's command display. From the Oblivion. Silence filled the bridge. No one moved. No one spoke. Zelfar hesitated. Accepting the transmission meant acknowledging that he had already lost, but refusing. That would accomplish nothing. He clenched his jaw and slammed his fist on the console. The transmission connected. A human face appeared on the holoscreen. It was a woman, calm, composed, and completely unfazed by the destruction around her. She wore a simple uniform with the insignia of the Terran fleet, but it was her eyes that unsettled Zelfar the most. There was no fear, no arrogance, just certainty. "This is Captain Layla Carter of the Oblivion," she said, her voice steady. "High Admiral Zelfar, your fleet is defeated. Stand down now, or there will be nothing left of it." Zelfar's hands trembled. He was Veil. His people did not surrender. They conquered. They crushed. They ruled. But now, his fleet was gone. His power shattered. A low growl rumbled in his throat. "This is impossible," Carter tilted her head slightly. "No, Admiral. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity." He wanted to scream, wanted to fight, but there was nothing left to fight with. For the first time in his life, High Admiral Selfar of the Veiled Dominion faced the truth. They had dismissed humanity, mocked their technology, and now they were paying the price. The bridge of the vengeance of Veil was deathly silent. The only sound was the faint hum of failing power systems, the distant crackle of damaged consoles, and the ragged breathing of terrified officers. High Admiral Xelfar stood rigid, his golden eyes locked onto the human woman staring at him through the holoscreen. Captain Layla Carter. Her expression remained calm, almost indifferent, as if this battle, this massacre, was nothing more than routine for her. Xelfar wanted to lash out, to demand answers, to reclaim his authority. But what could he say? What power did he hold now? The Oblivion had single-handedly dismantled his fleet. His Armada, once the pride of the Veiled Dominion, was now a graveyard of twisted metal and drifting corpses. A force that should have been unstoppable had been reduced to nothing in minutes. "You don't understand," Selthar growled, his voice low and bitter. "The Dominion does not surrender." Captain Carter remained unfazed. "Then the Dominion will cease to exist." Her words were delivered with brutal finality. Xelfar's officers flinched. Some turned their gazes to him, searching for orders, searching for hope. But he had none to give. He clenched his fists. "You expect me to believe that a single human vessel is capable of this? This?" He gestured toward the wreckage outside the viewport, his voice thick with disbelief. "This is not war. This is an impossibility." Carter's expression didn't change. "Your mistake was assuming human technology would follow the same limitations as yours. You thought our ships would be slow, predictable, bound by the same laws that govern your war machines." She leaned slightly forward, her eyes cold. "You never considered that we might have built something beyond your understanding." A flicker of rage ignited in Selthar's chest. He refused to believe it. Humanity was a lesser species, new to the galactic stage. They lacked the centuries of warfare, the technological dominance, the strategic brilliance of the Veiled Dominion. And yet, his fleet was gone. His hands trembled at his sides, but he forced them to still. "Even if you destroy us, the Dominion will not fall. We are vast. Our empire stretches across hundreds of systems. This humiliation will not be forgotten. Our vengeance will be absolute." Carter exhaled, almost as if she was disappointed. "You still don't get it, do you?" For the first time, her expression shifted, not to anger, but to something far worse. Pity. "You think we deployed the Oblivion because we needed to," she said quietly. "This wasn't an act of desperation, Admiral. This was a demonstration." The word sent a chill through Selthar's body. A demonstration. His mouth felt dry. He had assumed, no, he had clung to the belief that this ship, this terrifying anomaly, was a desperate gambit, that it was humanity's only ace. But what if it wasn't? As if sensing his thoughts, Carter continued, "You called this battle impossible. You think a single ship shouldn't be capable of destroying an armada. And you're right." She leaned in closer to the screen. "Now imagine what happens when we send an entire fleet." Selthar's blood ran cold. An entire fleet. Just one Oblivion had rendered his forces helpless. If there were more, if humanity had dozens or hundreds, it wouldn't be a war. It would be extinction. Zelthar inhaled sharply, trying to regain control. "You're bluffing," he spat. "No species can advance that quickly. You just entered the galactic stage. There's no way you could have built something this advanced without us knowing." Carter gave him a small, almost amused smile. "We didn't build it quickly, Admiral. We built it quietly." Zelthar's mind raced. He thought of the Galactic Council, of the reports on humanity, primitive, barely beyond their own system, technologically inferior. Had they all been deceived? Had humanity been hiding? His vision blurred slightly as the weight of realization pressed down on him. This wasn't just about his fleet. This wasn't just about him. The entire Dominion had made a mistake, a fatal one. Carter's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts like a blade. "I'll say this once, Admiral. Surrender now. Stand down, or we will erase every last trace of your fleet from existence." Silence stretched between them. Zelthar looked around the bridge, at his officers, at the wreckage beyond the viewport, at the terrified faces of those who had followed him into battle. They were all waiting for his decision. He closed his eyes. A veil did not surrender. A veil did not kneel. A veil did not beg. And yet, he opened his eyes and let out a slow, shuddering breath. There was no choice. Not anymore. The weight of surrender settled over High Admiral Zelthar like a crushing void. The bridge of the Vengeance of Vale remained eerily silent, the crew barely daring to breathe as their leader stood frozen. The battle was over. No, not a battle, a massacre. A slaughter that had exposed the Dominion's greatest weakness, their arrogance. He exhaled slowly, his golden eyes burning with humiliation as he looked at the woman on the holoscreen. Captain Layla Carter hadn't moved, her gaze still locked onto him, waiting. She had already won, and she knew it. Zelthar's pride screamed at him to resist, to fight to the bitter end, but his rational mind forced him to see the truth. This was not a temporary defeat. This was an execution, drawn out only because humanity had allowed it. His jaw clenched as he finally spoke, voice rough like shattered glass. "What are your terms?" A murmur rippled through the bridge. Even asking the question felt like a betrayal of everything the Vale Dominion stood for. Captain Carter didn't gloat. She didn't smirk or revel in her victory. Instead, she simply said, "All surviving Dominion ships will power down their weapons and shields. Your remaining forces will surrender to Terran authority. No further resistance." Zelthar's fists clenched, and in return, Carter's eyes darkened slightly. "You'll live." The bridge crew flinched. Some turned pale. Zelthar stiffened. "You would execute prisoners." "We don't take prisoners," Carter said simply. "Not after what the Dominion has done." The weight of those words crashed down on him. He knew the crimes his people had committed. The Dominion's conquest of weaker species, the forced labor, the slaughter of those who resisted. It had always been justified under the banner of strength, the belief that only the worthy ruled. But humanity had judged them by the same measure. And by that standard, the Dominion was now weak. Zelthar forced himself to stay composed. "There are thousands of my people on these ships. Officers, soldiers. Do you intend to wipe them all out?" Carter's expression remained unreadable. "That depends on you, Admiral." A heavy silence followed. Zelthar turned to his crew. His officers, once confident and assured of Dominion supremacy, were now hollow-eyed and shaken. They had seen the truth. The Oblivion had reduced their unstoppable Armada to nothing. There was no honor in dying here, only futility. His hand hovered over the console, over the command that would transmit his final order to the fleet. He hesitated. Would surrender truly save them? Did humanity want peace, or was this just the beginning of their revenge? Carter, as if sensing his thoughts, spoke again. "We're not here to exterminate your people, Admiral, but we will remove the Dominion as a threat." The meaning was clear. The Dominion, as it existed, would not survive this war. Zelthar's chest tightened. He thought of the High Command, of the ruling warlords who had built the Dominion on blood and conquest. They would never accept surrender. If they heard of this, they would send another fleet, more soldiers, more war machines. But what if? His mind raced. The Dominion's strength was its expansion, its ability to dominate through sheer force. But now, against this enemy, that strength had become a liability. If Zelthar surrendered, he would not just be submitting himself. He would be condemning the Dominion's leadership. He took a slow breath. Perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing. The Dominion had ruled through terror. Now it was their turn to feel fear. His fingers trembled slightly as he pressed the command. A single transmission broadcasted to all remaining Dominion vessels. "This is High Admiral Zelfar. All forces, stand down. Power down weapons and shields. We surrender." The words felt like acid in his throat. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, across the fleet, ship after ship flickered as weapons deactivated, shields dropped, and engines went into standby. The war was over. On the holoscreen, Captain Carter nodded slightly. A wise decision. Zelfar said nothing. He could barely breathe past the shame. Carter's voice softened just slightly. "Prepare for boarding. We will take control of your fleet." The transmission cut. Zelfar turned away from the screen, his heart pounding. He had made his choice. But deep in his mind, a new fear took root. What if surrendering to humanity had been an even greater mistake? The hum of the Oblivion's engines filled the silence as Terran forces moved through the surrendered Dominion fleet. Boarding teams swept through the powerless warships, securing command centers, disarming soldiers, and taking control of systems with ruthless efficiency. Every Dominion officer who had once believed in their empire's supremacy now stood helpless, watching as their conquerors took everything from them. High Admiral Zelfar sat rigid in the command chair of the Vengeance of Vale, his golden eyes fixed on the holoscreen in front of him. He had expected the humiliation of surrender. He had prepared himself for the cold stares of his crew, the whispers of treason, the weight of defeat pressing down on his chest like a vice. What he had not expected was the eerie silence of the humans. There was no mockery, no taunts, no unnecessary cruelty. The Terran forces boarded in disciplined, precise movements, securing each Dominion vessel with the calm efficiency of soldiers who had done this 1,000 times before. Not conquerors, not invaders, executors. These weren't warriors reveling in victory. These were professionals, carrying out a mission with the cold certainty of an inevitable outcome. The Dominion had always ruled with fear, believing it to be the ultimate weapon. But now, Zelfar realized the truth. The most terrifying enemy wasn't the one who screamed their hatred. It was the one who didn't need to. A soft chime echoed through the bridge as a transmission request came through. Zelfar inhaled sharply, composing himself, before accepting the call. Captain Layla Carter's face appeared once more. "We have secured your fleet," she said without preamble. "Your officers and crew will be detained until further notice. No unnecessary casualties." Zelfar let out a slow breath. "And what now?" Carter's expression remained unreadable. "Now you will deliver a message to the Dominion High Command." A flicker of suspicion stirred in Zelfar's mind. "You believe they will listen?" Her gaze hardened. "They don't have a choice." For the first time, Zelfar saw something in her eyes beyond cold calculation. It was something deeper, something that sent an unfamiliar chill through him. Not hatred, not vengeance. Finality. "Your war is over," Carter continued, "but the Dominion's war crimes will not go unanswered. We are taking your fleet as proof of your defeat. When your rulers see what has happened here, they will have two options." Zelfar swallowed. "And they are?" Carter's voice was quiet. "Surrender the Dominion, or watch it burn." The words settled over him like a suffocating weight. There was no bluff in her tone, no hesitation. Humanity was not here to negotiate. They were here to end the Dominion. Zelfar's mind raced. If he delivered this message, the warlords of the High Command would never surrender. They would fight to the last system, throwing more fleets into the fire, refusing to accept the idea that the Dominion could fall. But if they did fight back, Zelfar had no doubt how it would end. He had seen what a single human warship could do. He had witnessed an entire armada turn to scrap in minutes. If humanity brought their full strength to bear, the Dominion would not survive. "You're asking me to deliver our death sentence," Zelfar said quietly. Carter's gaze didn't waver. "No, I'm giving you a choice. Help us end this cleanly, or stand back and watch as we erase the Dominion from history. Zelthar exhaled shakily. He thought of his people, the millions of civilians who had lived their lives under the Dominion's rule, believing in its strength. They would all die if this war continued. For the first time in his life, Zelthar felt something he had never known before. Fear, not for himself, for the Dominion. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. "I will deliver your message." Carter's expression didn't change, but he swore he saw the slightest hint of approval in her eyes. "Good," she said. "Then let's finish this." The Dominion High Command had always ruled with absolute certainty. For centuries, they had believed their empire was untouchable, their fleets unstoppable, their enemies nothing more than footnotes in history. But now, as High Admiral Zelthar stood before them in the Grand War Chamber, that certainty had shattered. The room was vast, lined with towering holographic displays showcasing the Dominion's might. Fleets, conquered worlds, banners of subjugated species. But today, a new image dominated the chamber, the wreckage of the vile Armada, scattered like debris across the void, and the Oblivion hovering ominously in the background. The warlords sat in their seats of power, their robes marked with golden insignias of conquest. Their expressions ranged from fury to disbelief. "You surrendered." Supreme Warlord Drenvis snarled, his scaled fist slamming against the table. "A human ship destroyed in Armada, and you, our High Admiral, bowed to them like a broken slave." Zelthar kept his voice steady, though his insides twisted with unease. "If I had not surrendered, you would be speaking to a corpse, and the Dominion would have already fallen." A silence followed, thick with tension. Warlord Malzar, a veteran strategist, narrowed his reptilian eyes. "This is a trick. A single Terran warship cannot overpower an entire Dominion fleet. What did they use? A superweapon? A hidden fleet?" Zelthar's jaw clenched. No, it was their technology, their tactics, their understanding of war. "We never stood a chance." Laughter rippled through the chamber, dark, mocking. "Humans are primitives," Warlord Zelva scoffed. "Barely a blip in galactic history. Do you expect us to believe they have surpassed us?" Zelthar's hands curled into fists. They refused to see it. "You are making the same mistake we made," he warned. "We believed them to be weak. We dismissed their technology. And now, our greatest fleet is gone." The warlords shifted, their confidence shaken but not broken. Supreme Warlord Drenvis sneered. "Then we send the full force of the Dominion. We crush them before they can grow stronger." Zelthar closed his eyes for a brief moment. He had expected this. He had also prepared for it. "Before you do that," he said slowly, "perhaps you should listen to their message." With a flick of his hand, he activated the transmission. Captain Layla Carter appeared before the Dominion's rulers, her expression as cold as the void. "You stand at a crossroads," she said. "The Dominion can surrender and accept its fate peacefully. Or," her gaze darkened, "we will end you." The warlords bristled. Some laughed outright. "You dare threaten us?" Drenves hissed. "This is not a threat," Carter said simply. "This is a fact. Your fleets are outdated. Your tactics are predictable. We will not fight you on your terms. We will burn your shipyards, break your supply lines, and shatter your command structures. Your empire will collapse before you even understand how we did it." Zelthar saw it now. The warlords were not angry because they didn't believe her. They were angry because, deep down, they did. "You cannot defeat an empire that has ruled for centuries." Zelva spat. Carter's eyes held no mercy. "Then tell me, did your centuries of conquest prepare you for us?" The chamber fell silent. Carter continued, her voice carrying the weight of finality. "Surrender, or we erase you." The transmission cut out. For a long moment, no one spoke. Zelthar watched them all. These once mighty rulers, now staring at the truth they had spent their lives denying. And in that silence, he knew. The Dominion was finished. not by the might of an empire greater than theirs, but by the one enemy they had never prepared for: humanity.